Transition sounds are a really simple thing that do a ton to help level up your production because they're essentially priming the ear for a change that's about to happen. So when you're going from one section to another where you want a big dynamic contrast, where you want an energy shift, or you want a moment to feel more dramatic or suddenly more spacious, a transition sound does everything that you need it to, basically all in one little pre-made package. Now, there's tons of ways you can go about doing this like transition sound thing, but today I want to talk about maybe the simplest one to make yourself so that you guys can do it yourselves at home and you don't have to rely on sample packs and always using the same ones over and over and over again, because I've been doing that for a little while and I realized I need some new ones, so why not make a video out of it? So to demonstrate today, I'm going to be using a track I dropped a couple of weeks ago with my good friend Astro Traveler. It's called Mountain Getaway. Really liked how it came out. It's available all streaming platforms. If you're liking the snippets that happen to be playing during this video, definitely go check it out. Basically, this is the full project file for that track. And I've just muted the transition sounds that I brought in from another sample pack. And today we're going to be using our very favorite Vital to make our own just sort of like white noise swell transitions. So as soon as you load up an instance of Vital, you'll have the initialize preset with just the single oscillator turned on. You can go ahead and turn that off because we don't want any specific tonic information. And all the way down at the sample window, you're gonna want to turn on and just leave it on white noise. So if you didn't know, white noise is essentially all frequencies playing at the same time at the same level, and the sampling generator just happens to have a white noise effect in it already. So by itself, it's going to be very loud, very harsh, and covering all frequencies, like I said. Super aggressive. You're not going to want to sound like that in most of your tracks. So the first thing we're going to do is send Vital to a mixer track, and let's start to shape that white noise to give it a little bit more of the feel we're looking for. So let's just go ahead and throw down a middle C for like a full, let's go 2 bars here. So I've got to position basically one measure before and one measure after the drop so that we can shape it to fill that space and be tempo synced so that when we drag it into other projects in the future, it should be roughly about where we want without too much extra work. So like I said, the first thing we're gonna do is shape this a little bit to try to smooth it out and make it something a little bit more musical rather than just a high-pitched fuzz. Generally, I personally don't love a lot of low end in my white noise transitions. Sometimes it can be good, like if you have a really beefy part that's dropping out into nothing, maybe having some low end there is nice. But for the most part, I tend to keep it pretty focused on the mid. So I'm doing a gentle roll off up to maybe, 130 hertz or so. And then we're gonna bring this high shelf down at a nice gentle roll off as well. Just kind of visually getting that sort of mid-focused action going on. And we're just gonna start looping this, sort of hear it and start shaping it just a little bit in this first pass. So we're gonna throw another EQ here because we still got a ton of high end. Let's just low pass this. So that's feeling pretty good. It's like, present, it's large. We want it to be something that takes up a lot of frequency, but definitely not like too in your face. And I feel like that harsh, like above 10,000 hertz, gets pretty wild. So once you've got the noise kind of dialed in approximately where you want it to be, essentially you're just gonna need to shape it to sound more like a transition. Basically thinking about a transition sound you usually hear, starts at nothing, grows to the loudest point at the climax, right at the drop, and then it fades away back into nothing. So if we do that on the mixer track, we create an automation clip with 2 bars highlighted, cover the length of our note. We copy the maximum value, paste it right in the middle, and then bring the 2 ends down to 0. You end up with basically the simplest version of a white noise transition here. So this is what it would sound like in the context of the song. So I guess something I just discovered is that if you don't have the volume automation starting before the actual noise, you might end up with like a little pop at the beginning. But this is what it actually sounds like in the context of the song. Now, obviously, that's like a little bit robotic, a little bit plain, but I actually do think that it's just about all you really need from a usual transition sound. So I'm actually going to consolidate this just kind of as it is. So we've got a building block to sort of start things off around. We'll call this LD lazy transition 1, sure. Song selection, cutting the remainder so there's not a tail. We want to save the tempo information because ideally when we bring it into a future project, it'll self-adjust to fit the length that we're going for with that song. And we're not want to enable the insert effect so that that EQ is applied. And then we can drag that into our project and we should have just a nice, smooth, artifact-free white noise transition. But like I said, this one is a little bit boring and we can definitely do some stuff to make it a little bit more interesting. We're gonna do that right now. So right out of the gate, let's look at our volume envelope, right? It's very triangular, a little bit robotic. Doesn't quite have the life of our actual music. So perhaps you like a transition that kind of comes in out of nowhere and then trails off for a longer time. You can sort of drag the shape of the curve and up here. That's pretty nice. Let's just go ahead and export that one too. And then you can always do the opposite, where you have it come in slowly and then quickly disappear. So let's just kind of inverse the curve shape. So if you get too steep with the shape, it can kind of start to feel unnatural. So I'm just gonna play with that a little bit more, make it a little bit less aggressive. And just like that, we've got 3 pretty lazy, nice white noise transitions. That's sort of the fundamental idea. You can definitely mess around with this, volume shaping thing and go pretty wild with it. But I do want to show you just a couple more little tricks that can make these a little bit more spicy, a little bit more interesting, definitely a little bit more personal. So the first thing I want to talk about is, I think I mentioned earlier that white noise is essentially all frequencies at the same level at the same time, or some approximation of that, different colors or like different representation, whatever, it doesn't even matter. There's a bunch of frequencies happening in a bunch, and you can actually sort of tailor those frequencies to change their effective pitch, or like to create a tone with it if you wanted to, which basically means that you can kind of create any sound out of white noise. So let's say that we wanted something that felt a little bit more like a cymbal crash to come in right as we get to the drop. So if we look at our 2 EQs, we're cutting out a bunch of high end. A cymbal crash is generally pretty strong in the high end, and then maybe there's like a tonic, depending how large the cymbal is, somewhere down in like the mids to the high mids, right? So let's say we wanted to have the highs come in brightly, kind of right as the drop happens. So we can create an automation clip on the cutoff of that low pass EQ. And we start, where we were before, and then we suddenly go and we let a bunch of the highs through. So let's say that we want it to be just very sudden, and then sort of fall away the way that a cymbal would. So just doing that, we're sort of adding some highs right at the crash. Let's see what that sounds like. So now you get this like kind of high burst of energy that comes in, but it's kind of missing a little bit of like a sort of tonic or like a bolsterous boom. But obviously this isn't gonna sound exactly like a crash cymbal. I'm just kind of doing this real quick, but you kind of get the gist. So let's say that we want, well, I'll try out 500 hertz and see what happens. We're gonna create an automation clip on that. Copy this value. Just have a nice big steep boost at 500 hertz and see what happens. So that might be a little bit too broad here. Let's see what's going on. So I'm gonna go ahead and narrow that out a good bit. And I'm actually gonna move it up and then make the fall off a little bit faster. So I'm starting to like what that's doing here. I'm realizing that the impact isn't feeling super natural, so kind of the lazy man solution to that is just add a nice little sweep into it. And now it's feeling a little bit loud to me, so let's bring that back down. I'm gonna go ahead and bring some of those highs back out now that we've got this sort of more tonic thing going on. And just like that, we got something that's got a little bit more character and a little bit more texture. So now let's go ahead and consolidate that guy. Oh, let's make sure that we've only got the things that we need selected. Let's go with LD color transition. Oh wow, there's a little bit of color to it. Boom, let's see how that looks. I think I might have just messed up a bunch of these other ones, so sorry if you don't get the cool free download. But if we compare the shape of this now like slightly more interesting transition to one of our first ones, so here's the very conical, super simple shape. If you look at those two side by side, there's not huge differences, right? But you get this slightly more interesting transient happening right at the impact. So then that impact moment is going to feel a little bit bigger. There's a little bit more motion. It's got a little bit more color. So now that we've come this far, let's go one step further, and then I think I'm going to just let you guys have your imaginations run wild after that. But something that I do like to mess around with a little bit is throwing on some stereo effects. So let's start with just automating the panning here. Let's get all the way over here, and then here, and then now let's half a beat. All of a sudden, we're gonna go, let's chill out on that for a second. Even wider, and then we want to be back in the center. Sure, why not, right? Toned down version of that, getting back out to normal here. So then we end up with something like this. Let's actually dial back those tonic things that we just added a bit. A little more shaping with this EQ, just to make it unique from the others. And then we end up with something like this. So I actually want to have it send back over here one more time before we get to the middle, just to make it real spicy. Yeah, that's nice. So now we're getting all kinds of stereo stuff going on. It's not too distracting. It's not like jumping ear to ear. It's not like crazy busy, but it's definitely just a little bit more interesting than these simple like conical white noise transitions. So now if we select just the things that we want in this loop, and now let's find out the hard way whether these all look the way we thought they would, or if I messed up some exports. So it looks like I messed up 2 of the lazy transition exports, but the good news is I will be throwing at least these 3 white noise transitions, and you know what, I'll throw a couple other ones that I've got hanging out on my hard drive in the Discord server. The link is in the description. It's going to go in the Stuff from Videos channel. So if you guys want to use these exact sounds and a few more that I've been using in my own productions, definitely hop in there, grab them totally free. You can just literally download them from the server. But yeah, let me know what you guys like to do to your white noise transitions, how you like to spice them up, and if you'd like to see me go through some different ways to make these even more interesting, or some different types of transition noises that we can get into in the future. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.